Good morning, folks. Back again with another watch review. This time I guess I can say, sort of reviewing the iconic Seiko monsters, two of the most popular in the series of monsters, the Seiko SRP307 and SRP309, or also affectionately known as the Orange Monster. Now, I may be one of the few people who actually own both of these particular second generation monsters, and how I came about having them is quite remarkable in itself. And these are two of my favorite watches, although I don't wear them very much. I think from a collector's perspective, they're ones that you break out for special occasions, not to be used as beaters. This particular monster, the 307, I didn't change much on it. Actually, I don't know too many people that modified this watch from what it is. The only thing that I did do was I added, I swapped out the crystal and purchased a crystal from Crystal Times, a double dome sapphire anti-reflective crystal with a purple tint. You could kind of see the purple tint as I moved the watch back and forth. And I didn't do anything else to it. Kept it on the original Seiko bracelet, which has the signed Seiko crown. It's a bit beat up. I actually bought this watch secondhand, used, and this is where the story gets very remarkable. After searching for this watch for about 5 years, desperately looking on eBay, all of the internet, all over the place, trying to find one. I even contacted my good friend Mark at Long Island Watches, asking him, like, if he had any ideas on how I can put my hands on one, the orange one in particular, or either one of them. I know he originally sold the Seiko Monster, the Orange Monster, years back when Seiko first released his watch, but he told me good luck. But something told me that if I persevered and kept looking, I probably could eventually get my hands on one. And that's exactly what happened. Interestingly enough, I can say a couple of years, every single day, faithfully, I would look at the various places, eBay, and I saw some on eBay, the first generation, which does not have these very edgy indices, which is what gives this watch its name, the Monster, because of the teeth. The indices actually look like teeth, and that's the reason why this watch started to become referred to as the Seiko Monster. So I used to see Generation 1, and eventually I started seeing a lot of Generation 3s. Now the Generation 1 has the 7S26 with movement in it, which is the same movement that's in the SKX007. That's for Generation 1 Seiko Monsters. It has that movement. But for the Generation 2 Seiko, which is that movement in the Generation 1 is not hand winding or hackable. Seiko upped it slightly by putting the 4R36 movement inside this watch, which is hand winding hackable, which is really cool. And it just blossomed from there. Now, again, this watch is collectible, very sought after, and I had been searching every single day for this watch without let up. One day I came in to work, and as I usually do with a cup of coffee, I sat down and looked on the internet, and someone suggested that you join a watch forum, which would alert you. Instead of you doing all of the work, let the watch forums do the work for you. Put in the request for the watch that you're looking for, and then sit back and pray. And that's exactly what I did. And one day I opened up my email, and sure enough, there was an alert that this watch was being sold from a dealer in Nevada for the ungodly price of $250. I couldn't believe it, because the day before I looked all around, I didn't see it, and I didn't give up. The next day I came, it was part of my ritual. I looked, and sure enough, there it was, sitting for $250, which if you could get a Generation 2 Seiko Monster SRP307 for $250, do not even think twice about it. If you look, even Generation 1 Seiko Monsters are selling for upwards between $800 and $1,000. Generation 2, forget it. You can pretty much name your price. I looked at the listing and noticed that it was, I wouldn't say a pawn shop, it was a watch retailer who specializes in high-end watches. Now, apparently, the previous owner of this watch wanted to purchase a watch that they had. I think it was a Rolex. And as a matter of trade, to kind of bring the price down, I don't know how much he negotiated, he traded in this Seiko Monster, and they immediately put it up on their website for sale, and I bought it. No questions asked. I couldn't believe it. As a matter of fact, I was in such disbelief. I was still in disbelief until I actually had it in my hand. I actually called the store. They sent me an email, a receipt. They did next day shipping. I saw this watch on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, I had it in my possession. I kid you not. Perhaps because of the time difference, they got in, saw that the watch was paid for, and immediately shipped it out. And I had it the next day, stunned, right? But I had decided that if I did get my hands on this watch, or either one of them, I would give the Black Monster to my wife. And being true to my word, that's exactly what I did. I went to her, I told her. She had been following me, maniacally searching for this watch. She would look at me, look on the computer with a cup of coffee in my hand on Saturday, Sunday mornings, and say, like, what is wrong with this dude? And so I told her, listen, I don't know if and when I'm ever going to find that orange monster, and it doesn't really much matter. You know, I made it up in my mind that I was going to actually give her this watch. And that's exactly what I did. I presented it to her. I changed the links on it to fit her wrist, and I gave it to her. And convinced her that she should wear it the next day. She was a bit indifferent, and like most women that are married to men that are obsessed with watches, they just don't see it. They don't get it, and some of them really don't care. They just wish that we stopped what we do. But she wore it the next day, and when she got home from work, I looked at it, and I don't know how she did it, but she had managed to scratch the bezel in one day. I couldn't believe it. She had scuffed up the bezel, and I was upset. I was so upset that she said, listen, dude, this is a bit too much for me. I can't promise you that that's not going to happen again. I don't want the pressure. I don't want the watch. Take it back. And I said, are you serious? And she said, yeah, I just dude, I'm just not into it like how you are. And, I said, okay, I don't want to put no pressure on you. I'll take it back. No worries. I mean, who would deny having a second generation monster, a Black Monster in their collection? So the question became, like, what am I going to do about this scratch? So I went on the internet and I saw, I think it was CG Watches, where she had actually used a Dremel drill, it's not really powerful enough to buff and engrave things, along with a polishing agent that's made by a company called Mother. And I ordered those two things along with some tools to actually buff the bezel. And I gotta tell you, I have never seen anything like that. The only problem I had is, in my inexperience, I actually tried to polish out that scuff with the bezel being on the watch. So the polishing agent got all down in between the nooks and the crannies of the watch, and I had to use Q-tips and a little small screwdriver. It was like, man, why did I even do that? I should have tried to take the bezel off and do it that way first, and that way I can clean. But sometimes with these watches, especially people that modify watches, you don't really change it unless you really, really, really have to. You don't fool around with these things. I had already decided I was going to change the crystal which means taking the movement out the back, taking the case back off. And when you do that, you put it back on and hope that you haven't compromised the seals to the point that if you do go diving, that it doesn't start letting water seep in. So, you know, I said to myself, and you can actually still see some of the polish and the residue, but it shined up this bezel. I couldn't believe it, and I said, wow, I'm going to do this to the other one, but I'm going to try to figure out a way to take the bezel off. Didn't really need it for the other Seiko once I got it, but I definitely adore this watch. Now, again, this was after searching for this watch for years, every single day, relentlessly looking to see if it was out there, then finally joining a watch forum and letting them send me a notification if someone was actually selling this watch anywhere on the planet Earth, or anyone on that particular watch forum. And that's how I wind up finding it, and I found it for $250. Less than 1 week later, that same watch forum, I kid you not, some gentleman in Russia was actually selling the watch that I wanted more than any other, at the time, any other watch that I've ever wanted in my whole entire life. Less than 2 weeks later, I got both of these watches in a 2-week span. And like the owner of the SRP307, he actually was selling this watch because he wanted to purchase a different watch. So he's on the one in, one out philosophy. I do not subscribe to that. And it's almost laughable, especially when you think about a watch that takes you a very long time to acquire. But he had about 4 or 5 Seiko Orange Monsters, and he was confident that whenever he wanted to, he could get another one. I didn't share that enthusiasm. It was very hard for me to find one at a price point that was reasonable, because you'll see Seiko Monsters, especially an orange one, anywhere between, like I said, 800, 1,000, 1,200 for generation 2, generation 3. Generation 1, which does not have these edgy indices, these teeth. Now, Seiko does have a generation 3, which has a 6R15 movement, which is the better of the 3 movements in these watches, but they're incredibly expensive. Those watches start at $600. They're very easy to find because they're 3rd generation. They're widely available. You can get one from Long Island Watches, and anywhere really you can find a generation 3 Seiko Monster. But getting back to this one, he actually wanted only $350 for this watch, which, in the condition that he described it, on a scale of 1 to 10, he estimated that this watch was a 9. I actually got it and was even willing to give him 9.5, 10. It was absolutely flawless. No scratches, no nothing. The only thing that I did to this watch, like I did with the other one, is to order a double dome sapphire crystal, which you can see is a blue anti-reflective tint to it from Crystal Times Horology. And that's the only thing I did. I sized this watch up for myself, left the original Seiko bracelet on it. Don't really wear this watch all that much unless I want to front and stunt. You know, I might put it on just for the shock value. But it is a collector's item. It's not to be worn every single day. These watches are incredibly rare. And after looking, even to this day, I tell people this story. After looking for these watches independently for years, I wind up finding them in a week span and was able to get them at the price. Now, this particular watch, on a scale of 1 to 10, when I got it, this was a solid 8, 9. This one, a solid 9, 10, 9.5, 10 for sure. And because my wife didn't want the pressure of having me review this watch every time she took it off, I actually have both of them in my collection. Now, interestingly enough, the Seiko Monsters, I went online and I found a a forum that actually has a listing of all of the monsters, the monsters that Seiko sold, and it's called the Ultimate Seiko Monsters Guide. You can Google this, and I printed it out. As you can see, what I started to do is the ones that I actually had, I actually highlighted. When Seiko originally released this 307, they wanted $399 for it, and the 309 they wanted $441. So I actually got these watches years later for less money than they actually retailed for. Now, the second generation monsters, the other coveted one beside the black and the orange one is what is referred to as the Dracula, which has red indices that look like bloody teeth. And Seiko only wanted $284 for that watch when it debuted, the SRP313. That one is definitely on my bucket list. This SRP309 for sure, blue. Right, it has a black stainless steel bracelet, and this 583, the SRP 583 that Seiko wanted $278 for when it first. You will not be getting these watches if you could find them. That's even if you could find them. Trust and believe, no one is going to sell you a Generation 2 Seiko Monster, even with the 4R36 movement in it, for the prices that that Seiko originally wanted when they were released, no matter what condition that they are in. As far as these limited edition, I would definitely, they didn't have a price for these, but this SRP 455 is very similar to this 581, with the exception that it has a sunburst dial and a gold crown. I would definitely want that one. I would definitely want this Moon Monster, yellow, same teeth indices with the yellow bezel. I would definitely want that one. And those are the only ones. I said to myself that if I did get more Seiko Monsters, it would only be Generation 2 or the limited edition ones that have those indices that look like teeth. I don't care what price point they would be. Those are the only monsters that I would actually want in my collection. Here are pictures of the third generation monsters, which are driven by the 6R15 movement, quite expensive. Look at the orange monster, this SBDC023. Seiko wants $1,042 for it. It's not even nearly as popular as the 309, which originally retailed for $441. Different movement appreciated. So this movement that's in the watch right here, the 6R15, a better power reserve, aesthetically is prettier, it's polished, but who cares? This watch does not have same design, same look, same shroud, crown guards, crown at the 4 o'clock, but it does not have those very edgy teeth that are popular and present on the 309 and the 307. Folks, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you already know. Most of the people watching this video will know the history of these particular watches. They will be able to confirm unequivocally, what I've discussed thus far. And the bottom line is, if you can find these watches, if you're a collector, if you're looking for a solid Seiko diver, if you could find a Generation 2 monster, especially a 307, which is the black one, or 309, which is the orange one, get it. The only thing that you should consider is the price at which the seller is trying to sell it, and the condition on a scale of 1 to 10. If it's a matter of, let's say, the crystal, the original Hardlex crystal that Seiko's uses being scratched, still get it, because you could always upgrade to a double dome sapphire. So that shouldn't discourage you from getting it. Matter of fact, I would use that as a negotiating point. But then again, the person that's willing to sell it, as sane as that may sound, may not care and not be interested in your negotiating point, but you could always change that out. Also, if the bezel has scratches, you can polish it out depending on the severity of the scratch. Those are different things that you can work around. The main taking away point would be for you to actually get your hands on this watch. I actually love these watches. I'm wearing one today here in New York City. It's supposed to be 200 degrees outside, but the lume should be fine. They haven't been charged in a while. Seiko uses what they refer to as lume bright, which is their answer to the Swiss C2123 lume, and it burns pretty brightly. I have to admit, the lume on these particular watches burn very brightly when they're fully charged. And yeah, that's my review. Comment, subscribe to the channel if you like. I really appreciate the feedback. If you have anything to add to it, I'm sure watch connoisseurs or watch enthusiasts, watch collectors would definitely appreciate any comments as well. And until the next time, Cray Boogie out.